One of the things I love about our show is discovering sustainable ideas and innovations to help our communities and the planet as a whole. There are so many of them, and that's always inspiring. I am Chris Elims in Lagos, Nigeria. Great to have you with us. Here's what's coming up. How digital technology is making a real difference to smallholder farmers in Ethiopia. How marine patrols in Spain are protecting an underwater climate hero. And why the revival of native plants in the Sahel region is bringing about positive change. But we begin in Zimbabwe. Bad news about the effect of climate change, from extreme weather to pollution and food scarcity, can really get you down. But thinking about the environment doesn't have to be depressing. With the help of dance, music and art, it can be fun. Now get ready to feel the beat as one creative initiative encourages action through joy and inspiration. It's time to get moving.
This is Kuwadzana, a suburb of Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. It's home to 17-year-old Lincoln Marambaushe. For over 2 weeks, the trainee mechanical engineer has been practicing a new dance routine. Then his crew, called Pandas, are preparing for Dance for Climate Action, a community-based song and dance competition organized for the second year running by Greening Kuwadzana, a local environmentalist group.
We should plant trees. We should not throw my paper pese. So I have to make something that is very unique so that when I present, people will understand the word climate.
Zimbabwe currently produces over 300,000 tons of plastic waste every year. Much of it is dumped in public spaces, causing environmental as well as health hazards. Awareness of the causes and effects of the climate crisis and other environmental issues is low among Zimbabwe's youth. According to a recent study, 1 in 10 can't name a single climate adaptation measure, such as recycling or clean energy. This year's competition theme is Dancing for a Plastic-Free Future.
Dance for Climate Action, it's an event that uses dance and, of course, poetry to communicate messages of climate action, environmental justice. We believe that art has a unique way of speaking to people, whereas, academia state facts. Art can deal with emotions, it can deal with, it can bring this sense of kinship, to remind us that we are together. We are the environment.
The competition among the teams is on. The goal is to communicate the problem of plastic pollution in a performance. Lincoln and his group, Pandas, are last year's defending champions. But this year, they are not as lucky. Although they miss out on the top prize, Lincoln knows their efforts weren't wasted.
But we're going to be friends from now on, because they have the same vision with us. So we're going to take each other numbers. Then takutotaura, totanga kuita ma projects, social media, takuto poster and everything. Helping the Dance for Climate to move on.
The dance competition is over, but today a group of 10 volunteers with the Greening Kuwadzana project are turning to another form of pop culture and spraying graffiti to encourage people to reuse and recycle more and reach people who otherwise aren't familiar with these issues.
And some people relate better to music, some people relate better to dance, some relate better to, graffiti. So we have artists here. Some of these artists had no clue whatsoever about what climate justice is. But now that we educated them, now they are actually using their, skills, art skills to actually draw messages that will communicate with other people.
As attention from some few community members begins to build, The reactions are mixed to this creative form of environmental advocacy.
If people drive by, for example, the painted messages will discourage them from throwing trash out the window. I hope they continue with this in different communities. Not everyone gets what they're trying to say with the graffiti, and some might even ignore it, but others learn something from it.
Here too, some more greening Kwadzana volunteers are taking climate action into their own hands. Planting new trees where old ones were cut down, they aim to plant around 5,000 new trees by 2025. With this, the activists are reclaiming a public space and turning it back to a recreational area that can be used and enjoyed by locals.
Nature really is something to celebrate. Awareness of your surroundings is the gift that keeps on giving. In many rural communities in the Sahel region, women are rediscovering indigenous plants that grow wild, which were once an important part of their ancestors' diet. In times of changing weather patterns, these have many benefits.
The women are skilled at plucking the leaves off the twisted branches of jigga trees. In the village of Danbuda, they're in demand. The women can harvest the leaves all year round, using them to cook or to sell at the market in the nearby town of Zinder.
Before, we used to go into the bush to cut wood that we could sell to buy food. Then one day, I went to Zinder for a funeral, and my relatives took me to Sahel Foods in their neighborhood and told me that they buy Adua fruits, desert dates. So I started selling these to them. People at home laughed at me. Why would anyone buy Adua fruits? But then, 2 others joined me. Now, 40 women do it too.
The idea to harvest and market native wild plants came from Joseph Garvey. He grew up in Niger and had long been thinking about the benefits of reviving native dryland trees such as the wild Hansa species.
They used to have Hansa, they used to eat Hansa, but only in times of hardship. So when we started working with them, we started buying their Hansa. At first they were reluctant, they didn't think we were serious, but they realized that we were actually serious, we were actually buying it, and they got involved in harvesting a lot of Hansa and delivering to us. And they became very happy from the extra income they could make. But we weren't quite satisfied because they were harvesting in order to sell us, but they were still considering it something that they'd rather not eat themselves.
Now they've started to change their minds. As a social enterprise, Sahara Foods raises awareness in local communities about native trees that can provide nutritious leaves, fruits, and seeds, and they've learned to appreciate them. Sahara Foods has been active in the Zinder region since 2014 and these days works with 1,500 small farmers and 80 villages. They supply various fruits and leaves from over 20 local plant species, which are then used to produce oil, jam, spices, and pastry. 60 products are now sold around Niger, and some of them are also exported.
Up until today, many people thought that these bush foods are just local stuff and don't have any particular value. They forgot about them because they just grow wild in the bush. But now people have begun to understand that our products are useful. For example, doctors at Sandair National Hospital prescribe foods from our shop, such as Hansa porridge, which helps diabetics.
Sahara Foods cookery courses are popular. Today, instructor Hawa Habu is showing the women what they can do with Hansa fruit. It has a high protein content.
We have taught them a lot of things, such as how to cook Hansa with sauce made from horn-fruited jute, which they didn't know, Hansa porridge, which they didn't know either, and jujube pop biscuits. Basically, we taught them a lot of recipes.
Joseph Garvey learned a lot from his Norwegian father. Arne Garvey was a young man when he emigrated to Niger with his wife. He began collecting seeds from indigenous plants and resowing them using a direct seeding method. Sahara Sahel Foods successfully replanted 160 local varieties in this way. The farmers followed suit. Here in the commune of Dago, 35 kilometers from Zinda, many of the trees were planted by the farmers themselves.
The whole idea of direct seeding is that you can teach it to the farmers, and the farmers can teach each other. And then once you get what we call the WPC economy established, it will have its own momentum. And I would like to inspire people not only here, but all over the world, to use their indigenous perennials.
Joseph Garvey also teaches at the University of Zinda. He works together with Dr. Abdul Rabu. The topic of local wild plants is also on his curriculum and has regularly been sending students to train with the enterprise since 2018.
The Sahara Sahel food site has become a training ground for our students. It's where they go to learn about the plants that are most often found in arid and semi-arid zones here in Niger.
After 10 years in the Zinda region, Garvey's project is flourishing. Many smallholder farming families are now experts on various local tree varieties and how to care for them, and are passing their insights on to their children.
You know, a child will watch you from a very young age. My daughter understands that it's with the income from these efforts that will buy them certain items. So she follows in our footsteps, and that's why from time to time she sows trees too.
Jamila Yusuf has a regular income and can feed her family well. She's even been able to build her own house. The small seeds have borne fruit.
From South Africa to Eastern Europe for our next story. Sometimes you can make a big difference without even leaving your neighborhood. In Budapest, we meet one green-fingered resident who has single-handedly made a forest.
An oasis of green in the middle of a city. Mark Richards is monitoring the temperature of his compost. Getting it right is vital to the process. The compost will be ready in 6 weeks. Richards began working on his garden in the heart of Budapest 5 years ago. Today it's a mini jungle, overlooked by apartment blocks. What used to be a gravel-covered parking lot is now the Aurora Climate Garden, a flourishing biotope. We filled the soil with compost and covered it with mulch, and these trees grew out of the mulch. Today, some 180 plant species grow on the 400 square meter site. The goal is to sequester atmospheric carbon in the plants and soil, as well as to cool the air directly, counteracting the urban heat island effect of the city. Richard's aim is to create a self-sustaining forest-like ecosystem, so he doesn't do much pruning, instead trusting that the trees will find their natural balance with each other and that even weeds can improve and strengthen the ecosystem of the garden. The garden is irrigated with rainwater. This is a completely sustainable and very useful method, especially in urban environments where climate problems can become extreme. Twice a week, the Climate Garden has an open day where people can drop off their green waste that's then used to make the compost. Every time I'm here, I learn something new from Mark. He's very helpful and explains everything. Mark Richards also gives talks in schools. He wants to pass on what he's learned about climate action to as many people as possible, especially the younger generation.
Letting plants do their thing is not just a good idea on land. Underwater, they play a massive role in balancing the global climate too. Seagrass, for example, is brilliant at absorbing carbon. It's so important that in some places it even has its own human protection unit. Let's head to Spain to find out more.
Marcial and Silvio belong to Mallorca's Posidonia police. They monitor Posidonia oceanica, also known as Neptune grass, or simply seagrass. The aquatic plant can store 3 times as much carbon dioxide as a terrestrial forest and is thus an important climate protector. That's why they check to make sure ships aren't anchoring in seagrass.
A fine can be quite hefty. It starts low at €300, but can go up to €100,000.
This luxury yacht has caught the attention of the seagrass police.
Now, this cylinder comes into play. What's special about it is that it has a glass bottom, which allows me to see the seabed. What's beneath us? Is it sand, where the yacht is allowed to anchor, or seagrass?
The valuable underwater meadows can help slow down climate change, at least to some extent. But the yacht being inspected is anchored in sand, so there's no threat.
The boat of Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg is here in the Balearics. Those are the kinds of boats that, if they drop anchor in the wrong spot, can easily destroy 300 square meters of seagrass. When the boat moves, the anchor chain can slice into the greenery like a guillotine.
Marcial and Silvio move on to the next yacht they want to monitor.
We have to check and give the, we have some apps and applications.
Donia, I know Donia.
Yeah, Donia one, yes.
Do you know the rules about where you can
Absolutely.
anchor?
So we use the French app, Donia, and it's really useful. It guides you as to where you anchor and not anchor. And, it helps a lot, to be honest.
The sailor from Ireland has done everything right and is helping to protect the seagrass, which also has an important role on land.
In some cases, this seagrass is removed in summer to make the beaches look nice for tourists. But later, it's put back to prevent the sand from being washed away during storms. It acts as a protective blanket against wind and waves. It's a good shield.
Mainland Spain is now planning to start conserving its seagrass meadows as strictly as on the Balearic Islands. For Marcial and Silvio on Mallorca, it's time to relax. It's been a good day. All the anchors were resting where they should be, well away from the seagrass.
Now it's time to head back to Africa. In Ethiopia, food insecurity and malnutrition are a big concern. There's drought in the south and conflict in the north. So one former farmer has made it his mission to make agriculture easier for all. With the help of a mobile app and a support service, and his efforts are bearing fruits.
Asnakesh Demisi from Ethiopia's Oromia region is one of the many farmers that Abrame Andreas Buta is keen to help. He's the founder of a digital platform that helps smallholders tackle the many challenges they face. Lasha, or farming in Amharic, is an app, but also offers in-person support from local agents.
Agents are recruited from the community. They speak a farmer language, and farmers are not required to have a digital tool or not required to know any additional language. By their own language, the call agents provide a lot of support.
Like many of the agri-tech startups on the rise across Africa, Lersha provides weather forecasts, soil analysis, and disease warnings. The farmers and agents can also use it to get access to tools and machinery, seeds, and advisory services. Based in Addis Ababa, founder Abrame Idriss Bouta is a former farmer himself and familiar with the range of obstacles they have to cope with. After 2 years as a farmer, he was bankrupt and determined to stop others suffering the same fate.
I thought of providing multiple solutions within a single value chain so that the smallholder farmer at the end of the day become productive and also getting better income.
Around 85% of Ethiopia's 105 million residents live in rural areas, and the majority work in agriculture. Almost all the country's agricultural output is produced by smallholder farmers.
There were times where our populations are struggling to feed themselves and also satisfy the market demand. But looking at the cultivable land, we have a very huge land, huge arable land, with a potential to produce, 200, 300 million tons of different agricultural commodities. So especially in the African context, we always pronounce farmers are very poor, but actually they are not poor. They lack a proper solution, and they're always willing to pay for that proper solution.
A widow who relies on farming to cover her family's needs, Aznakesh Demisi is among those willing to pay, a small share of every transaction with Lersha. She's one of more than 200,000 farmers using it, online via the app and offline through agents. She cultivates wheat, potato, barley and beans. The Lersha agent has told her that now is a good time to plant wheat. As well as advice, the service offers her facilitated access to loans. With access to financing services, I can buy better seeds and rent a tractor. I can also use a combine harvester. For renting machinery, I used to sell my produce to other farmers and buy it back later. Access to loans helps solve these problems. These services sound promising, and there are more and more apps like Lersha claiming to help smallholder farmers increase their yields and incomes through digital and data-driven means. But while these apps promise huge benefits, farmers should be aware of potential drawbacks.
What's happening is that a lot of these farmers are signing up to these platforms and their data is being extracted from them and then being used to sell them products from these agribusiness companies. So, seeds, like they are being sold seeds through a privatized corporate system. And at the same time, their data is being taken from them to be used by these companies, but also to be sold onto third parties like insurance companies, banks, NGOs. And none of this is known to them.
Lersha indeed collects data from its users and says this helps them get access to loans.
Young people need support in collecting more data about them, analyzing the data and making them bankable by formal financial institutions. And we are convincing financial institutions to use the land title of their families, their mother, father, and their neighbors. So by just having a small letter stating that my son can use my land, the banks are now offering finance to this young farmer.
This is a questionable practice, according to some experts, and that's not their only criticism. Some farming apps lock farmers into dependencies, forcing them to buy their products, such as inputs or fertilizer, and sell the crops they yield at their prices.
At the same time, you have these new laws that are coming into place, which are criminalizing farmers from freely sharing their seeds and reproducing their seeds and selling and sharing them amongst each other. So it really is a way to entrench a more corporate food system here on the continent.
As agriculture goes digital, many experts and NGOs suggest using more open source tools instead of paid or proprietary apps. Still, Aznakesh Demisi trusts Lersha's data-driven support. It helps her make informed decisions and gives her access to new services.
that's it for today. If you'd like to share your thoughts about the show, do drop us a line at eco@ewe.com. We love hearing from you. And if you search for Eco Africa online, you'll find even more inspiring stories. Thanks for watching, and goodbye from me, Chris Alems in Nigeria. See you next time.